My first rose is blooming. Our climbing rose. Surprise! Here are some drift roses that I've featured on a separate website page. This is always a beautiful scene. The purple in front is spiderwort, and then you have a pink rose and a red rose. The red rose is not quite going yet. And there's a yellow one in there too. We'll go look at it. So the spiderwort, which has its own website page, and I love this pink knockout rose. It's just gorgeous. And this is a regular rose. It's yellow, but I don't know what kind it is. And we moved it. It used to be over here somewhere. And it's doing so much better here. And there's kind of a red one. It's not in full bloom yet. But this is not to feature the drift roses. Back here is a coral knockout rose. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at it in full bloom. It just stands out, and it's right here at the back of the flower bed. So as you look down or walk down the flower bed, it really catches your eye. And I love how these two are different colors. So look here, you have a deep coral and then a pink. And these will bloom twice. I'll have to deadhead all this. Look at all the buds. How those two, one's pink and one's coral. Gorgeous, huh? And here's looking down from the top of the beds to the yard, hammock, pergola. So these are red. They're kind of pinkish red, but they're red. That looks gorgeous over there. Look at that. That just makes me a bit happy. And there's some of the drift. And this one is the yellow. It's doing better than it ever did before, so I'm glad we moved it. It's pretty gorgeous. Really don't know if that's mites or something down in there. Ants? Because maybe it's just done doing what it does, because this one doesn't have it. And this one does have it, whatever that is down in there. So again, coral, red, yellow, and pink. And there's the other drift right there. This pink one is always gorgeous. I love it. I just finished weeding these beds. They were horrible, but look how great they look. You could just sit back and go, ah, I hope it stays that way. Just gorgeousness. I like to pan my flowers and look for those beautiful little shots. I like it when they're like this and trying to open up a bud. Let's talk roses. This is a climbing rose that we have. We bought it many years ago. It was a specialty climbing rose. Put it in the backyard. This is the fun story about this one. We put it in the backyard in the far back corner of the right, and we didn't like it there. So the next year we dug it up and moved it here, and it died. lo and behold, about 3 years later, something like that, I start seeing coming out of the ground. We actually have our drainage pipe we're digging here. But lo and behold, coming out of the ground right there was what looked like a rose bush. I was like, wait a minute, that died. Where'd that come from? I haven't seen it in 3 years. What in the world? And so I began catering to it, and it wasn't long. It grew up like this, and it is a red climbing rose instead of the beautiful, I think it was a pink one that I had. Well, I learned specialty roses like this are grafted onto a hardy rose stem. So the hardy one survived under the ground and came up red, and the other one was just gone. So we're gonna sit down with my roses here and chat a bit, and then as I have some other roses opening up throughout the season, we'll look at those and add them to this video. You can see I've got a lot of bugs eating this. I need to put something on it to protect it. I did that to my other ones and I forgot about this one. So the scientific name of a rose is Rosa. The common name is rose. And the family, the rose family, is a Rosaceae. Pretty easy to remember. Roses are in the form of shrubs, climbing or trailing, also known as rambling. I did not know there was a difference between climbing roses and trailing or rambling roses. Both grow up supported structures, but they have a few differences. Climbing roses are less vigorous, have stiff stems, have large singular flowers, and are most often rebloom. So this is not a climbing rose, even though I said that. I know I bought it as a climbing rose, but it often acts and looks like a shrub. But trailing roses are more vigorous, have flexible stems, and have small sprays of flowers, and most often only bloom once. This one only blooms once. You can see there's a spray of flowers right here that we're looking at. And it's not a singular. It looks more like lots of petals, like a double flower. And so I'm thinking this is a rambling rose. I have to be careful touching, but these stems are not stiff, they're bendable. Those down there that have been there a long time, they're pretty stiff. Now after these get done blooming, you can kind of see right here, I've actually cut it off even further. I will cut it off all the way down to the bottom, and it will begin growing again. So it blooms on old wood. In other words, the wood, what grew the previous year. So I'll cut it all the way off, and it'll begin growing, and then like from here on up, all of this grew since I cut it off a year ago, and that's what we're getting blooms on. Most roses are deciduous, in other words, they lose all their leaves and they get leaves back, but some of them are evergreen. Flowers are mostly white or pink and yellow or red, and most rose flowers have 5 petals that are upward and 5 sepals that are downward, and together they are called tepals. I don't know, let's see if we can see that. I don't think we can see that because this is a double flower. I don't know if I have any single flowers in my other ones. I might have to buy me a rose that's a single one. The fruit of a rose is berry-like and is called rose hip. Now, I've had rose hip in tea before, and I've never seen rose hips on my roses. And I've often wondered about that until I was studying now, and I learned that the reason is that most domestic roses have tight petals that do not allow pollination. I've always wondered that. So yeah, these are really tight petals, and apparently they don't get much pollination going on. You have to get, I read that there's certain kinds that you can get rose hip on. I guess some people will purposefully buy it to grow rose hip. I guess I'm comfortable just buying some rose hip in the specialty stores. So most roses that I've purchased are the trendy knockout roses. They're Rosa knockout or Rosa by Radraz. But most people just know them as knockout roses. Knockout roses are known for their ability to thrive without much maintenance, to bloom profusely, and to rebloom. But I've been eliminating the red from my yard, so right now I have a pink and a salmon colored knockout rose. And we'll look at those when they are in bloom. Knockout roses were cultivated by American rose grower William Radler in 1989. I mean, that's my lifetime. And he planted hundreds of seeds that year, and only one germinated, which was knockout. Here in 2024, I feel as if people are getting tired of them and are wanting something new. I know I am. I have actually found drift roses, which is a dwarf variety of the knockout, and I am absolutely loving them. And I have another video already made for that. You could go read that. I have one yellow rose that tries to survive and barely hangs on. And we recently moved it closer to the pink knockout rose to free up one space from the nuisance of thorns. So here's a few rose terminologies I've been kind of reviewing. You have a shrub rose, which gets wide and is cold hardy. A ground cover rose, which sprawls out everywhere. You can shop and look for continuous blooming. You can look for antique roses, which is one that's been around before 1867, and so it's considered historic. I kind of would like to get an antique rose. You can look for wild roses, which is one that's not bred or not a hybrid. And the wild roses are pink, bloom once, and have 5 petals. Now, I have often wondered what a tea rose is, and I have a little bit better concept of it now, and I'd kind of like to get one. So a hybrid tea rose is a long-stemmed rose with 30 to 50 petals, and it's popular around Valentine's Day. So they are the single flower long stem roses that you buy in the store around Valentine's Day. You know, when I think of a tea rose, I think of small. You know, everything at a tea party is small. You have small sandwiches, you have small cookies, but nope, it's long stem roses. So I've always heard of grandiflora rose, and I didn't know what it was. I have a general idea now that it's under the hybrid tea rose class and has floribunda features, which has a continuous blooms in clusters. But then now you got floribunda, which I've heard of before, and it's a rose that blooms continuously in clusters and blooms longer than the hybrid tea rose or the grandiflora rose. So Floribunda is a hybrid of the hybrid tea rose and the polyantha rose. Well, now we just introduced another word, so we got to talk about it. Polyantha. Now, I've never heard of this one. The polyantha rose is similar to the Floribunda, but it's shorter and smaller, making it good for edging and hedges. It's a great choice for the beginner rose gardener. Then you have ones that are like miniature roses, which are similar to tea roses or a grandiflora rose, but its height is only 15 to 30 inches. And believe it or not, different from miniature is mini flora, which is larger than a miniature. Then you have Alba roses, which I've never heard of, and they date back to 100 AD. Wowzer. And you have Bourbon roses that were cultivated in Bourbon, France. You have Centifloria roses, which is known as a cabbage rose because it looks like a cabbage. Then you have the English or the David Austin rose, which is a variety from a British rose breeder and are for more experienced gardeners. So don't get one of those if you don't know what you're doing. Can you believe it continues on? You have a China rose that, of course, was introduced in China and repeat blooms. You have a damask rose, which is one that is said to have originated during Bible times. Now that's old. And there's a summer damask that blooms only in the summer. And there's an autumn damask that blooms in both seasons. There's the Gallica rose that dates back to the 1100s and is sometimes called the French or the Provence rose. Wow. So those are a bunch of basic rose terms I've recently come across, and I feel like there's so much you can learn about roses, but I want to talk about some other things that I think a lot of people already know about roses. So most folks have heard the famous phrase spoken by Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." So a rose symbolizes love and beauty and passion, which is why florists sell it at Valentine's Day and for other love moments and events. However, a yellow rose symbolizes friendship, and that's why I like yellow roses if one is gifted to me. I don't like red a lot. Even though it means love, I'd rather have a yellow rose. And who doesn't know that a rose has thorns? Thorns are a reminder that love can be painful. Remember that a rose does not stop looking beautiful because of the thorns around it. So cliche. A rose is probably the most often used subject for quotes and poems. I mean, you can do an internet search and, find a zillion of them. Everybody also knows the children's rhyme of roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet. And so are you.